this spring, the ships and aircraft of 5 nations moved through the same stretch of water and sky off the western coast of the Philippines, rehearsing a simple but consequential idea. When allies practice together, they reduce the chances that a routine encounter becomes something more dangerous. The exercise, Balikatan 2026, unfolded as a layered set of drills, maritime cooperative activity at sea, integrated air and missile defense ashore, and live-fire counter-drone training off Zambales. It was theater, training, and signal all at once. The maritime piece began at sea on April 24, with frigates, amphibious ships, and support vessels maneuvering roughly 40 nautical miles from a contested stretch of the West Philippine Sea. Under the on-scene command of the Philippine Navy's BRP Miguel Malvar, ships from the Philippines, the United States, Japan, Australia, and Canada practiced the everyday tasks that make coalition operations possible: close quarters maneuvering, underway replenishment, coordinated communications, and the routines of watchstanding that preserve safety when multiple navies operate together. The visible choreography, lines of silhouettes against the horizon, radio channels in common use, and shared procedures for maneuvering was intended. Exercises like this teach common language and habits: how to call a course change, when to pass an intent over the radio, how to form up for a replenishment. They are, by design, a kind of rehearsal for predictability. A group sail, a simulated refueling at sea, a planned formation transit. These are practical moves to build trust and to test whether different navies can operate as a single force. But visibility invites attention. From the opening day at sea, Philippine commanders reported they were being watched. Captain Paul Michael Hechinover, commanding officer of BRP Miguel Malvar, provided the operational detail. He said during the duration of this activity, we detected, so far, 4 PLA. Navy warships around the vicinity. The exercise starting from our day 1 at sea on the 24th of April until today. We also monitored 3 aircraft from them flying around, 1 fixed-wing maritime patrol aircraft, 1 unmanned system flying above 20,000 feet, and 1 helicopter coming from one of their warships. The presence of other nations' ships and aircraft close to the drills is now a familiar pattern in these waters. An expression of interest, a posture of surveillance, and in strategic terms, a reminder of the broader context that overlays routine training. Commanders on the scene made a point of emphasizing restraint. The Philippine report and the officers speaking with visiting journalists were careful to underline that proximity did not become provocation. "They're just here monitoring our activity," Captain Hechinover said, describing behavior that was observed as watchful but non-confrontational. No radio challenges, no aggressive maneuvers. That restraint matters. When vessels and aircraft from different states meet at sea, the immediate risk is miscalculation, disciplined behavior, clear communications, and predictable routines. Reduce that risk. At sea, the multinational maritime cooperative activity displayed both the tactical and the human side of interoperability. Sailors drilled seamanship, station keeping, signaling, and communication, while aviators practiced coordinated airspace management. Ships that have never operated together before learn to exchange the tactical language necessary for joint maneuvers, how to brief for replenishment, how to form protective screens, how to pass sensor data in real time. The practical gains are straightforward but profound. Shared procedures and repeated practice make it less likely that a routine monitoring ship will be misread as a challenger, and they give commanders the tools to manage crowded, contested maritime space. On land, a different set of skills took center stage. Layered air and missile defense and counter-unmanned aircraft systems in San Antonio, Zambales, Philippine and US. Units carried out live-fire engagements against training drones and simulated aerial threats. Short-range systems, shoulder-fired interceptors, and integrated shore-based radars were brought together with networked command and control to test a single shared operational picture. The United States employed Avenger air defense systems, firing Stinger missiles. A Marine air defense integrated system engaged a Banshee target drone at an altitude of roughly 9,000 feet. Philippine forces brought their own systems into the picture, including medium-range ground-based air defenses working alongside Allied assets, Major Xerxes Trinidad of the Armed Forces of the Philippines framed the drills plainly. The Balikatan is not intended to provoke or be addressed to any particular country. Every country has the right to be ready for any circumstances, especially to threats to national security. That line helps explain the public messaging that surrounds these exercises. Defense officials, both here and among participating partners, are careful to say the drills are precautionary, designed to prepare forces for contemporary threats, not to target any specific actor. The technical heart of the air defense training was as much about networks as it was about missiles. Integrated air and missile defense is not a single weapon. It is a system of systems. Early warning radars and distributed sensors pick up unknown tracks. Those tracks are evaluated, classified, and then shared across command and control networks, so the right shooters can be cued at the right time. A layered defense might use a long-range radar to detect an incoming threat, a medium-range surface-to-air missile to engage at distance, and point defense weapons like Avengers or shipboard close-in systems for last-ditch protection. In the drills, crews practice this sequence: detect, evaluate, allocate, engage against a range of targets from small, low-flying drones to higher altitude unmanned targets. That sequence, sensor to shooter, reveals a practical truth for defense planners. Training exposes gaps. When allied units share sensors and pass tracks to each other, weaknesses become visible. Timing, data formats, communications latency, rules of engagement, and the human decision-making in the loop all matter. The defense units on the ground and at sea use the exercise to identify those gaps so they can be corrected in training cycles or procurement choices once units return home. For the sailors and airmen taking part, the drills were also about muscle memory. Shipboard teams honed the watchstanding discipline that keeps complex operations safe. Air defense crews, radar operators, weapons officers, link operators exercise the timing and choreography required to move from detection to intercept in minutes, sometimes seconds. When machine guns and shoulder-fired missiles were used against small, low-flying drones, the training replicated the messy, close-range encounters that have become all too common on modern battlefields. There is also a political layer to Balikatan. Exercises like this send signals that go well beyond the tactical. For participating governments, a visible multinational presence in these waters demonstrates investments in regional security and underscores allied commitments. For neighbors and other observers, the drills are a reminder that the South China Sea remains a hedged high-stakes space where commerce, sovereignty, and strategic competition intersect. The presence of surveillance ships and aircraft, whether described as monitoring or as shadowing, does not change the outward purpose of the drills. But it does add diplomatic weight. What happens on the water is often filed and discussed later in diplomatic cables. Official statements and after-action reports. After-action reports are the other quiet work product of any exercise. Commanders will catalogue what worked and what did not. Sensors that underperformed will be noted. Communications that were slower than expected will be flagged. Logistics shortfalls, spare parts, maintenance windows, refueling opportunities will be recorded. Those reports matter because they translate the week's events into specific adjustments, new training, updated procedures, or equipment buys. In practical terms, an exercise breathes life into procurement choices and shapes the next round of doctrine. There is also a changing threat picture that these drills are meant to address. Small, inexpensive, unmanned systems have proliferated globally. A swarm of remotely piloted aircraft or a single low-cost ground-launched drone can complicate defense plans. Countering those systems can require electronic warfare, kinetic interception, and a doctrinal shift, recognizing that defense must be layered to handle widely different threat signatures. The live-fire exercises with Avengers, Stingers, and the Marine Air Defense Integrated System, where EA direct response to that reality, showing that short-range options combined with integrated sensors and higher echelon interceptors can form a credible defensive umbrella. But drills are not only about equipment. They are about people, the crews who learn to operate together, the commanders who must make split-second judgments, and the communications officers who keep the channels clear. Multinational training fosters habits, shared radio disciplines, standardized reporting procedures, and the practice of explaining intentions. Those habits are the first line of de-escalation at sea and in the air. When a ship calls another to say, "I will pass your bow at 1,000 meters," turning to 180, and that phrase is understood by both sides, the risk of misstep falls. Likewise, when Allied commanders have practiced a joint air picture and can confidently state who has weapons control in a sector, the chances of accidental engagement diminish. A second theme runs through the week's events. Phi, stability, Balikatan, is meant to be seen. It is a ceremony of capability as much as it is a rehearsal. The drills are public in part because transparency can be stabilizing. Neighbors see what forces are doing and can interpret intent. The visibility also draws attention. Observers often follow exercises closely. So do those nations that want to measure capability or signal presence. How both sides manage that attention, whether with restraint and professional behavior or with aggressive signaling, can determine whether a week of training remains a week of training or becomes a diplomatic incident. For diplomats, the presence of multiple partners operating in the same space sends a message about alliances and about how those alliances might act in the event of a crisis. For analysts, the exercise provides data, footage of maneuvers, logs of communications, and the patterns of sensor integration that can be studied and assessed. For regional observers, it is a reminder that the operational environment around the Philippines is a central concern for security and commerce. As ships and aircraft prepare to leave and as live fire ranges are cleared, the immediate narrative is one of careful professionalism. Participating commanders reported that mission objectives were achieved and that safety remained paramount. The important thing was both accomplishing objectives and doing so safely and successfully. One commander said, summing up what may be the most important measure of these drills, "In the coming days and weeks, the tactical outcomes will be translated into operational lessons. After-action reports will be filed, training plans will be revised, procurement decisions may be influenced by what worked and what did not." The human lessons, shared procedures, common radio language, and the confidence that comes from having rehearsed together will persist in the way crews brief and prepare for future operations. There is a quieter, longer-term effect as well. When allies invest time and resources in routine, repeated practice, they build a common operating culture. That culture, composed of trust, transparency, and mutual expectation, reduces the chances that routine monitoring will escalate into unintended conflict. It does not eliminate strategic competition. It does not remove national interests or rivalries, but it does create a buffer, predictable behavior, clear communications, and mutual familiarity with each other's ways of operating. Balikatan 2026 was at once training and statement. A practical rehearsal in seamanship and air defense, a test bed for layered counter-drone measures, and an exercise in alliance solidarity. It unfolded in waters where geopolitical tensions are real and where the presence of surveillance ships served as a reminder of the stakes. Through it all, the drills emphasized a central point. Preparedness is not only about hardware, it is about the human systems that link sensors and shooters, sailors and aviators, commands a P, and coalitions. It is about the repeated work of making operations predictable and safe. When the ships and aircraft finally steam for home, the footage will be replayed, the logs will be reviewed, and the lessons will be distilled into policy choices and training cycles. For now, the takeaway from a week at sea and on the ranges is clear. Routine practice, disciplined behavior, and shared procedures matter. Because in crowded seas and contested skies, the simplest acts of professionalism are often the ones that keep an incident from becoming a crisis.